But Kevin, I have to ask you, just what was your overall impression of the NBA All-Star festivities in Cleveland this past weekend?
Bro, I thought it was trash. It's like we talked about the Pro Bowl being crap. I mean, we talked about a lot of the All-Star game festivities for both sports being crappy. But I mean, Kyle and I were talking about this before the episode had started, and in my opinion, it really does seem like nowadays generation seems like they're too good to partake in these activities. Nowadays, it feels like they believe that there are different tiers and almost like an NBA society where they're too good to participate in these children's games. Now, I'm not disrespecting the people that are actually partaking in the activity because at the end of the day, you are still taking the risk of injury. Granted, they're for fun. That shouldn't really be anything of mass consequence. But at the end of the day, I understand and I respect that you're an athlete. There's no reason to get hurt when you still have a whole second half of the season. But in terms of participating in some of the simpler things, the skills challenge, you're not running at a full speed. You're not absorbing any contact. I mean, yeah, you can sprain an ankle or something like that, but no one's really going out there and diving to do anything significant. And then, of course, the dunk contest, we all know the risk injury there. 3-point shootout, you could put yourself into a slump. You could get yourself out of a rhythm for people that are in game shooters, as they like to break it down. But I mean, overall, man, it's just not exciting anymore. It's not really something that we look forward to seeing. I mean, for God's sakes, I should be ecstatic that Cole Anthony went out there and he wore Tim's to dunk a basketball because he's from fucking New York. And I was more than less excited for that. I was very blah, and I really wanted Cole to win, and Obi Toppin ended up winning. So shout out to Obi, but what did he really win when the competition was pretty crappy? So I mean, overall, we all know that we used to get excited. Obviously, everybody likes to make the comparison of the greatest dunk contest of all time is the Zach LaVine and Aaron Gordon face-off in 2016, and we haven't had anything relevant since. But I mean, to be realistic, that was probably the most memorable one, just because all of the dunk contests prior to us being born, or right as we were just beginning to understand what sports were the best dunk contests of all time. Vince Carter, Kobe Bryant. I mean, you name it. There were some great dunk contests in the early 2000s and the late 90s, but to what everything has become now, it's underwhelming. It's just I would not want to waste my Saturday night watching those like I used to when I was in middle school and high school, and when I used to get excited about watching to see who would win. Now it's just like, I mean, like, who cares? It's nothing memorable. So the NBA needs to completely do things over. They need to scrap all of the competitions and revamp it all. To me, they need to add a king of the court. But I know that that'll never happen because, dude, you're enticing injury there. That's one-on-one matchups. You have to rigorously play defense back and forth for to claim a title that's completely irrelevant. So I get why that'll never happen, but man, the NBA All-Star Game, the NFL Pro Bowl, they need to completely either be cut off and just say that you're an All-Star and get a pin, a sticker, a jersey, and hang it up and say you're an All-Star this year, or just cut everything altogether because it's just not what it used to be, and it's actually really depressing.
Kevin, I didn't actually really watch any of the All Star festivities. I really just kind of got the highlights from Twitter as it was ongoing. And when it came to the dunk contest in particular, I watched that on Sunday, like the day after it took place, because that's how underwhelming it was. So overall, Kevin, I'm with you 100%. This past All Star game was atrocious. It was just, there's no defense being played whatsoever. I mean, when Steph Curry goes out there and scores 50 points, now when you look at the stat line, it's like, wow, that's amazing. He scored 50 points. He knocked down 16 threes. That's an all star game record. But there's no defense being played. I mean, at best, throughout most of the game, you're probably getting 66 to like 75% effort, like 2/3 to 3/4 effort from these guys. And then it may get a little competitive at the end just because, there's a little bit of intensity that goes into it. But by and large, those guys aren't there to, play like aggressive style basketball. That's not what they're going to do. You might have a couple flashy dunks here and there, but overall, the All-Star game is a dud for me. It's not really something that really kind of draws me into the All-Star festivities. The one part that I'm always drawn into is the dunk contest. That's the one standout competition for me because, like Kevin said, there have been great dunk competitions in the past. Vince Carter, for example, Jason Richardson back in like the mid 2000s. You had Dwight Howard in the late 2000s and early 2010s. And then really like the biggest one of late was what Kevin mentioned, the Aaron Gordon and Zach LaVine one in 2016. There have been great dunk contests in the past. But Kevin, to kind of mention the point about Cole Anthony, when he brought out those Tims and was starting to hit like little dance moves before he even did his dunk, you could pretty much tell where that dunk competition was going to go. And it was underwhelming to say the least. Just it's just not that good anymore. And a lot of these guys that we want to see in the dunk contest, like some guys like John Morant would be an instant draw for the dunk competition. But I don't think he's going to compete in it just because it's like you mentioned, these guys can go and get injuries in an all-star game or an all-star competition that could potentially screw them up for the second half of the season, and they don't think it's worth the risk. But that's the point of the all-star weekend. We want to see these superstars and these mega NBA stars showcase their skills at the highest level possible when they're all combined in one arena for a weekend. And we're just not getting that anymore. I mean, for God's sakes, I know Obi Toppin won the dunk competition, but his dunk on the final round was not even that impressive. And the only reason why it wasn't impressive was because the guy before him kept missing the dunk attempt over and over and over again. So, I mean, really the one standout to me was probably Karl Anthony Towns with the 3-point competition. I think he's like one of like the first big men to ever really win it. I think he scored 29 points in
Outside
the
of
final
Dirk.
round. But it's like, you'd have to go damn near 10, 15 years to find something like that. I mean, good on him. He was able to do that. But it's just underwhelming to say the least. I'm with you 100%. This All-Star weekend needs to be completely revamped. I don't know how they're going to do it because to me, this is really kind of on the players because the players aren't showing that much of a willingness to actually go out there and compete at a semi-competitive level. And unless it takes something like, I mean, for God's sakes, I mean, the only time I've actually seen guys compete at a high level in the All-Star game was the year where Kobe died. And it was because they were doing it in honor of him because of the competitive spirit that he brought to the game when he was playing. But it's been a couple years since then. It's kind of just gone back to status quo. And I don't think it's going to change for the better anytime soon. So the NBA, I know they put on these festivities every year, but to me, it's just a money grab. And I don't understand why people would actually go out of their way, spend money to watch these athletes compete at like 50 to 75% effort. To me, I don't think it's worth it. That's why I don't really watch it anymore. And if I do want to watch it, I'll just watch the highlights after the fact because by and large, the NBA All-Star festivities have largely become irrelevant because they're just not exciting anymore. And it's unfortunate because they used to be exciting when I was growing up, and they've just deteriorated to a point where it's a non-factor for me, and we barely even pay attention to it anymore. So, all in all, I'm disappointed, and there's no other way I can really say it.